Hey everyone, my name is Omar, and I'm back with another episode of Deep Dive with OA. Today, my very special guest is Seth Marlatt. Seth is CEO and founder of Altir Venture Studio. Seth, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Omar, for the invitation, and I'm thrilled to be here. This is great.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to learning a lot from you today. So, can we start with because just as we were discussing in our, pre-recording chat,
Yeah.
you currently hold and have held some really fascinating roles across different companies over the last couple of decades. So can you talk us through that, please, and help us to understand how you got to where you are today?
Certainly. If I go back to, kind of my education, if we went all the way back there, um, honestly, Omar, like I thought that I had everything kind of mapped out, right? I would become a chemical engineer, and then, I would end up, kind of going in and getting a great job and so on and so forth. And, chemical engineers were getting paid a whole lot of money. Well, I realized that I really didn't like chemical engineering, right? And the course chemi was a challenge, and so I ended up switching and really kind of kind of learning one of my first lessons, which was you got to be a little bit nimble and you have to be honest and true to yourself in terms of what you care about and what your priorities are. And so I stayed with environmental engineering, and then as well kind of started to dabble in this thing called, business and economics, and that really took me into my professional life, where I started during the dot-com timeframe, right, which was its own tumultuous ride, but um, it started with being a coder actually, and there I ended up finding a whole variety of things that I liked as well as things that I didn't like. I loved the side of data and really kind of getting into the details and the logic of what data told us about a business. What I didn't like is, I wasn't a very good coder, honestly. And so, you got to know what you're good at and what you aren't good at. And so that took me to, a company called MicroStrategy, which was this high flying dot-com company that, if people have been tracking with cryptocurrency and Bitcoin now, they'll probably know this gentleman, Michael Saylor, who, he's kind of become the poster child for Bitcoin, but he is and was the CEO and founder of MicroStrategy. And I joined this company in its fledgling stages, and we wrote it from about $25, when I joined, to 333. And everybody was just sitting there hitting refresh, looking at their net worth, right? A whole bunch of 20 something year olds, not really understanding what was then a massive downturn, and the stock went to $3. And
Yeah.
it was really kind of the first life lesson of nothing is permanent, and you really need to evaluate where you are, and and where you're going, not just in your own career, but as well the companies that you work for and are affiliated with. And with that being said, MicroStrategy was this really, really, awesome entree into this world of just like super smart people who were resourceful and who operated with, um, an objective of, trying to get to an outcome. And, it was something that, probably was an indelible moment for me in my career. I didn't really know it at the time, but it ended up, being something that I hearkened back to, kind of years later. Um, in full disclosure, I was, victim of the seventh round of, a reduction in force, and that, kind of showed me the door. But, with some of these, moments, they create doorways, for us to, to kind of be shepherded into a different direction. And so that was actually the first, that was the entree to the first business that I started called CadenceQuest. So my partner and I, were kind of looking at each other on the day that we got let go and saying, what do you want to do? Right. We had these offers from these other companies like Informatica and other data, centric analytics organizations. And we said, well, you know what? Like, I think that we can do this same kind of stuff that we were doing over here under our own shingle. Like, let's give it a shot. And so we started CadenceQuest really kind of with a very simple, design pattern, which was, can we, provide analytic services to, Fortune 500, Fortune or Global 2000 kind of companies. And we did that, right? So, CVS, Walmart, Staples, and a whole variety of those kind of companies in the retail space primarily ended up being customers of ours. And we ended up growing, a consultancy that was, a fair size, about just under 100 people. And throughout that journey, we ended up, kind of pushing on these areas, that were opportunities to leverage this data in a whole variety of, at the time, new and different ways. People wouldn't consider them new and different right now, but we partnered with organizations like CVS to say, can we take this transactional data that that is the lifeblood of, kind of the way that the business operates, and use that to provide value to the advertisers, to the, to organizations that are in the consumer products space, as a way to help target market and actually create more spend and more trade spend back into CVS. And that was the foundation of their loyalty program called Extra Care. And we created this technology that, ended up being a analytic targeting platform in order to help them do that. And, again, like moments in time where we were able to negotiate the deal such that we were able to keep the IP. And that gave us, we didn't really, I'd like to say that we were super smart, but, like we just thought that it was a good thing to do, right? So that we could go and sell it over here. It ended up creating the foundation for our software business. And so we, were able to grow a separate entity, as part of, that original company, CadenceQuest. And long story short, that evolved into something that a variety of different organizations were really interested in and came knocking. And we ended up selling that company to Accenture, to their Accenture Interactive agency. And that was, a really interesting step. And, in all honesty, I probably, didn't want to, kind of go back into this large consultancy kind of framework. And the cool part about Accenture Interactive is it was this incubation unit, like within the big mothership.
Yeah.
When we ended up starting to talk to them, they were only 300 people. Today, it's probably about 30,000, and they're called Accenture Song, and it's the part of their digital go-to-market strategy. But that 300 people, we'll call it incubation unit within this mothership. We thought this was pretty cool. We could have the resources, to really kind of do something different, and the scale to be able to, knock on doors that we weren't able to knock on previously. So. So we thought, yeah, go.
Sorry to interrupt. Just to do a date check, what year was it that you actually started working with CVS and built that loyalty program for them?
So we started that deal started in 2003, and
I knew it.
Yeah,
I knew it. Yeah. Because I was with Johnson & Johnson in Canada at the time.
Yeah.
And 2005, I switched over to Novartis in Toronto, and I was managing a brand for North America, and CVS was one of my biggest customers.
Yeah.
And so I completely relate to where I can't believe I'm talking to the guy that built that program. That's fantastic. That's
It was what
that's amazing.
it was one of these things that, like a lot of people tell, tell the story about, if you've ever gotten that receipt at CVS and you get all the offers on the back of it. Well, Seth is the one, right, who ended up, creating, that
Yeah,
big
yeah,
ass receipt,
that's
which is kind of
fantastic.
a funny claim to
That,
fame, right? But
no, no, but that was a time when data and analytics actually burst to the forefront, where
yeah.
the Walmarts of the world and the Rite Aids and CVS's actually started leveraging data for the first time. So it's such a pleasure to put that time frame in context. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that you hit the nail on the head. Like, people were trying to figure out how, both the internet and these big databases, quote unquote, right? At the time they weren't, big in today's terms, but they were pretty cumbersome, unorganized. Like, you had to have multiple joins to get at what you wanted to get to, and all of these things that today
Yeah,
we
yeah.
would kind of laugh at, right? But the reality is that the technology didn't match, the business desires, and so you needed smart thinking to organize data assets in a way such that the business could be supported, and we just happened to find that niche, right? um, and and I think that proof positive, like folks like Accenture, who definitely had the resources to do this, came knocking, and that was an interesting point in time, right? Because all of a sudden you're vaulted, from this rinky dink, a couple hundred person organization to hundreds of thousands of people, and at the global scale. And I mean, I ended up getting an MBA in terms of running a transaction, because Accenture didn't care if you were 300 people or 30,000 people, right? When they
Yeah, they
acquired you,
ran it the same way. Yeah,
you
yeah.
went through the same rigor, and wow, it was an experience, and one that again, like, I think helps me today advise founders on on how to organize themselves and be prepared for those conversations, whether you're transacting or not. But yeah, it was a definitely an impressionable moment. And honestly, coming out of Accenture, I learned a whole ton, about how to go to market, how to scale. It was amazing to be able to walk into a CMO that was taking you 3 years to call upon, right? And all of a sudden, in 3 weeks, you're able to get a meeting with them, and you're like, wow, that was easy, right? Brand matters, right? Stature matters, message matters, and
100%.
and and I
100%.
don't and I don't think I had a full appreciation of that at that point, right? But it's a very important dynamic to how we grow, these organizations and these ideas, now in our current roles. And so after Accenture, honestly, Omar, like one of my customers was this rinky-dink, promotions company called coupons.com. They had a digital presence on the internet, right? They were the first to take those paper coupons, and digitize them. But digitization at that time was literally sending them to the printer so that you could print it at home and walk in
Mm,
and still have it scanned, right? So not
yeah.
really an innovation, but what we did is my team ended up, going and building what would be their future platform, which was, the ability to take, the advent of, our smartphones and deliver offers to consumers in that path to purchase and provide value to them such that they could just click on it, right? It would go into their digital wallet, or they're tied to their loyalty program, and then they could scan that at the register and get that value instantaneously, right? So it was this big step forward for retail today. Again, we wouldn't think that it was that magnanimous of a jump, but we ended up lighting up, organizations like Walgreens, CVS again, Walmart was a customer, Dollar General, Albertsons, Safeway, all of these loyalty programs were really fueled by this technology that we ended up building. And, we ended up taking that company public, which was a really cool experience. It ended up rebranding as Quotient, right? Because coupons.com was a little bit too limiting, for the brand, as we said. And what I determined is that it was something that I was super passionate about, and honestly I had a very clear vision. And in this particular case, the CEO and I might not have had the exact same vision, and again, that's okay. He had more shares than me, right? So he got to vote with with his with his shares, and I ended up leaving to go to a company that a few of my friends and now partners had started called Turvo. We had worked together at coupons.com, and they left to go solve this supply chain problem. And one of the things that I had seen, in working in retail and CPG, is that it's really easy for us to like market and try to create value for the consumer, and that's fine. But if the thing isn't on the shelf, then it doesn't matter, right? And stockouts and all of these different kind of supply chain problems were something that was just a black box, and nobody had connected that demand sensing side to the value of being able to to really deliver for the customer. And so we plan to solve that through Turvo, which was a collaborative logistics platform, the first of its kind. And so very simply, you can think of it as, supply chain, logistics, and transportation. These are team sports, right? Where you have shippers and carriers and, warehouses and so on and so forth that have to collaborate around getting that widget or that product from point A to point B. And sometimes a whole bunch of stop offs in between. And we tried to approach the problem as, well, why can't there be a Google Doc type of, collaborative, scenario where we all work off of the same sheet of paper, digital piece of paper, right? In order to kind of see how this thing evolves, right? As it's being delivered. And that was a really novel, new way of thinking about solving the problem, because otherwise people would basically send emails and print out pieces of paper in order to accomplish that same kind of activity. And, we ended up growing Turvo to, a very substantial point. We took $100 million in venture capital, which was the first time that I had taken any money, in growing a company. And that was a new, way of operating, right? It comes with a lot of benefits, but also, a lot of responsibilities in terms of, just kind of working with your investment community. And, in a really, really positive way, we ended up, being the platform that organizations like Ryder, as well as Lineage Logistics, ended up using to operate their, substantial portions of their business. And even to the point where Lineage Logistics, came and purchased the company. And, that was, I think, a great move for them, because they're a real estate trust, and to be able to have that technology capability really enhances the value proposition of what is otherwise a big real estate, investment trust kind of corporation. And so, Turvo, I think is some of the best technological work of my career. And, I would say of I'll speak on behalf of my partners, like we did some really great stuff there, and it's still groundbreaking today. We'll look at the website, and many years after we left, it's very similar kind of things, right? So we feel good that, it had some longevity to it. And coming out of that, Omar, and sorry to be long-winded about this, but all of these lessons learned, we were gearing up to kind of solve the next supply chain problem, because there's still a lot of white space to have impact there. And somebody close to me said, you and these other folks, like, you're really good at solving these gnarly, ill-defined problems. Like, if you could package that in a way that was not a consulting, kind of operation, but something that was different, where you use IP and you take on, risk, in relation to, kind of what your customer is trying to achieve, like, that would be a really interesting idea. And we said, sounds interesting, right? We still want to, kind of grow some companies of our own, right? Because we have so many great ideas, or what we think are great ideas. We don't want to be limited from doing that. But we would love to work on, a variety of these other types of gnarly problems, and, and help people get value, from the ultimate outcomes that can be created. And that was the basis for Altir. And we started Altir just over 3 years ago. And we've been very fortunate to have a whole variety of folks from our past come and want to work with us. And we're a team of about 60. And you can think of it very simply as we work with companies who are small as well as large. It could be the two people in a garage, right? To the Fortune 500. And if they have an idea, like, we'll drop effectively a software company into trying to solve that problem from start to finish, right? And that's, everything from strategy all the way through product, engineering, go to market, so on and so forth. And operating like a founder. Like, we would want somebody to, if we're going to trust, that we can help influence the outcome of, these people's ideas, like, we have to, be earnest about that, and, and operate like a founding member. And that's a guiding principle for what we do.
Okay, so let's dig a little deeper. So let's talk about the, I would appreciate any details you can share on the Altir model itself. Any success stories, highlights, pitfalls that you may have encountered along the way, because the learnings that you had along the way to building Altir would have helped you to hopefully avoid some of those pitfalls.
Yeah, I would like to have said that I had it all figured out, and it's been, just up and to the right. Starting the company in the middle of COVID, was, both an opportunity as well as a challenge. I mean, I think mobilizing people and creating culture, during that time period, it was difficult. And, certainly, trying to get our name out there, and to build trust with people without being able to, to fly or drive and, get to see them, face to face. I mean, thankfully we had, Zoom to be able to, to bridge that gap in many respects. But, I think that we set out, as I said, to help solve these, really interesting problems. One of the biggest challenges, honestly, that, that we see is that we need to educate organizations, our partners and customers that we work with, about what we are and what we're not. A couple of my friends joke, they're like, Seth, you hate to be called the consultancy. And it's not that I hate it, but, like, I don't want people to think that, in any way, shape, or form, we're there to not deliver value and an outcome. Like, that is our objective function. And having lived many years in the consulting world, I think that sometimes consultants really get a bad rap, whether it's, appropriate or not. But they'll produce a PowerPoint, or they'll produce something, and ultimately it will be, maybe the right idea, but not, delivering on the outcome. And therefore it doesn't have the, the ultimate impact that it could have if you could actually, go fingers to keyboard and, and work the problem, to that resulting outcome. And so, one of the issues that we've had is, like, creating the proper messaging and value proposition so that people understand what we do, and how we do it. Another interesting I would say growth moment over the last couple of years is that, as an innovation studio, as a venture studio, um, you want to have some dry powder to put behind the ideas that you ultimately will invest both your time and potentially your dollars and your equity into. And we started down the path in early 22 to raise a fund, and we ended up taking it very seriously, and as part of that, looking to bring on another partner, because it's a full-time job, no questions asked, right? I think you have to like be dedicated if you want to do that, and again, like, respect your LPs, value in dollars that they'd be contributing. So we went to go bring on another partner, and unfortunately, the headwinds that the market started to see in late 22, early 23, really ended up creating a tumultuous situation for us, where that partner decided to focus on his family office, and unfortunately, we couldn't just say, "Hey, well, we got it from here, right? We'll do it, in our spare time." Um,
Yeah.
you just can't do that, and so we had to say, we're going to put the formal fund, and the aspirations that we had there on hold. We'll continue to invest off of our balance sheet, and that ended up being a lower amount, right? But it still gave us, some latitude to affect what we wanted to affect. Um, and, but that ended up being a lot of time spent on trying to cultivate that next, kind of arm of what we wanted to accomplish. Um, yeah, I think that those are some of the key learnings thus far.
Fantastic. So is that still on the cards? Is that something you still want to do? Maybe once the headwinds drop off?
100%. I think that, one of the thesis points that we have is that all businesses going forward, are advantaged if they have network dynamics associated with them. And the key aspect of having the network behind you, it creates a moat, right? It helps you with virality of growth. It ends up helping, you with defensibility, right? Because of, your penetration and so forth. And it also helps because, when you have company A and you can have company B have network association where they work together, then you can put $1 in and get $2 out. And, for us, that's a very key part of what, we think our impact can be, and the value proposition, and so forth. And so, to answer your question, yes, we think that if we, can continue to have, both, I'll say our human capital and IP investment, but as well have funding investment that we can pair together, it's a really great combination to ultimately drive value, to that network of portfolio companies that we work with.
Couldn't agree with you more. I've also tried raising a fund around the same time frame that you guys were as well.
Yeah.
Aside from the fact that I'm based in a region which faces a lot of other issues, the headwinds were just the icing on the cake for us, and we're just like, what, park this for now. We'll come back to it when we have the opportunity. But it's just feels like the right thing to do, to really support those founders and help them to kind of go to the next level, and double down on your big bets.
Yeah, I think that that's exactly right. And, it's, I mean, maybe in a bit of a selfish way, like, we believe that we can influence, an outcome for the better. And so why wouldn't we invest behind that? Right. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
it's something that, we think that there's intrinsic benefit to, to kind of betting on yourself, and, and if we're going to be
Oh,
part
absolutely.
and parcel
Yeah.
to helping grow these companies, like, yeah, let's be smart business people and invest behind that. Yeah.
Well, good. So, what advice do you have for founders who currently are in the market? I mean, most founders don't really know what a venture studio is. So, first of all, you have to kind of explain to them what you guys do. Um, and then what advice do you offer them up front? What is it that you say to them? Not necessarily linked to venture studios, but in their journeys to building their ventures.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's so important to have a community around you that you can tap into in a variety of situations, because um, you know being a founder is it looks very glamorous, and and I think a lot of people aspire to to become a founder because of what they see with you know a Mark Zuckerberg story or whoever it might be. um the reality is it ends up being a lot of hard work. It is pretty thankless, because your community, unless you reach an outcome that's like an IPO or whatever it might be, which the vast majority of organizations do not,
Right.
you're not going to get those accolades. You're going to have to put in a disproportionate amount of time, and make sacrifices in your personal life, to, I think, achieve the results that you want. I have yet to hear a founder say, "Oh yeah, I only work, 20 hours a week, right? And I
Oh,
get the results that I
yeah,
want." I mean, I'm
yeah,
sure that, I'm sure that there are people who do it, right? But what those businesses are and the dynamics behind them, like, we could talk about for an hour, sure.
yeah.
But I think that community is really important, Omar, and making sure that um, that you trust the people that you are working with and affiliated with, like that's an important piece, as well, because you have a lot that is riding on these decisions that you make, and especially if you take money. But I think also you have the responsibility for your employees, and and your customers. And as much as I think that I'm right all the time, I'm very often reminded how often I'm wrong. And
Sure.
the reality is, that having people that I can trust say, "Hey, Seth, by the way, you might want to consider X instead of Y," is a really, really helpful benefit.
So definitely not surrounding yourself with yes men.
Exactly, because I think
Yeah.
that, like, the hard truth, like, I have a friend whom he and I have worked together um, on a couple of businesses. I've been on, his board for.
Seth, I can't hear you. I can't hear you at all. Nope. Yeah, please go on.
Yeah, so this friend of mine who, I was a board member for his first company, he'll tell this story about what an absolute pain in the ass I was, right, as a board member, because I would ask these questions, right, which were uncomfortable. And, it wasn't because it was a negative comment on, on him or on the business. It was, quite the opposite, right? And trying to provide, value, to something that, I may see that he might not see. And, just trying to be a good custodian of, the responsibility, as a board member to help him in making these decisions. And, you know, it was an interesting point in time for our personal relationship to kind of go through that, because, we were young, and, like, you never have you never want a friend to like confront you and, kind of, hold you to task. And now, like, we talk about it and reflect on it, and it was one of like those impressionable points. And he has just grown into absolutely a powerhouse, in growing his second company. And, I'm super proud of everything that he's done with this company, per pay. And yeah, I mean, it's far exceeded, my expectations. And, and I'd like to think that I had a little bit of a part in that, but I think that those are the kind of scenarios that reflect, why that value is so important through the journey.
Amazing. Amazing. Yeah, that alignment is all too rare. And sometimes people get caught up in their personal relationships, not realizing that they have a professional role to play as well. And you can't sacrifice one for the other. It just doesn't work out. Everyone loses in the long term. So
you're right. And
excellent.
I think that, you need to assemble, that community of board members and advisors such that they are able to have an impartial point of view. As a founder, you certainly want to be thoughtful, right? Around organizing your board so that, you have like-minded individuals, right, in terms of what you're trying to achieve. But at the same time, you need people to, to help you, right? And, kind of sometimes give you the hard time, right, when it's appropriate.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Amazing. So any final thoughts? This has been a really educational call. I appreciate your time very much, but I'm also cognizant of, I don't want to take up all day with you, but any final thoughts that you'd like to share before we sign off?
Yeah, I mean, I think the last thing, and I think you and I, share this common philosophy. Building companies now is different than it was even 5 years ago. That's the reason that, our studios exist, is that, there's a different philosophy in how to be able to get to like the outcome of, a corporate entity, a product, so on and so forth. And I think that the rewards for growth scaling and things like that are not the same as they were. Like, I don't think that, the venture community is going to continue to, to throw dollar after dollar in the way that it used to.
Yeah.
Maturing that's happening in that market, even though there's a whole bunch of noise right now in the AI, funding cycles and so forth. But, I think that, advice to founders is certainly that, like, think through how you tackle these problems, because the most valuable resource you have is time. And, being able to make decisions, in an efficient, effective way such that it progresses your agenda, in the most rapid way possible is super critical. And as you and I know, like, there's a whole bunch of facets. You make the wrong hire early on, it can set you back 6 months.
Yeah.
And, that's one of the things that I think that the studio community does for these founders as they light up these ideas, is you can hydrate an idea in minutes, right? Rather than having to try to hire team members and, kind of build the plane as you're flying it. Not to say that, that's fine. You can do it. It's just going to slow down your progress. And
Mm,
one of the things that we pride ourselves on is putting the right people in place after we know truly what is required to grow that particular company, that product, to the next level, right? Because those are the kinds of people that you strategically want to put in place such that, you can, again, have a larger impact on the resulting company and the economics and so on and so forth. So, I think that that's where I see the real, distinct opportunity is working with studio organizations to have to create that strategic advantage. And it's not taking anything away from the founders. If anything, it's
Mhm.
helping their agenda more. But I understand that there's a little pride in ownership. But hopefully, that tide will turn. And we rely on AI now, to answer all of these different, kind of business questions and things. And, we're incorporating it into every facet of, of our lives. I think that, the venture studio kind of community, the innovation studio community plays a similar kind of role, right? It's a cheat code
Yeah,
accelerating your idea.
yeah. I always find it funny when I talk to VCs who are interested in investing in AI. I always ask them, do you actually understand the role that AI is going to play in the future? AI is going to enable every single other vertical. AI is not a vertical, it's an underlying seismic shift in the way that business is done across every other vertical. And they're like, huh? I don't understand. Well, and that is the challenge, right? Because a lot of our VCs are woefully uneducated when it comes to, I mean, forget about AI. There's still people who don't understand Web3 that, they can't hold a conversation about any latter day developments in the space at all. And so for them, it seems like FOMO. They're just running after the next big ticket because they're just afraid that they'll miss out. And at the same time, there's also fear that obviously the investment is going to go to waste. But then their LPs will slaughter them if they miss out on the latest big thing that's
Yeah.
coming down the pike. So it's a
Yeah.
series of fears.
Yeah, you're spot on, right? And not to mention how corporates, right, start to think about this. I mean, that's a
Oh
whole
God. Oh
whole different
God.
ball of wax, right?
Yeah.
And arguably that's going to be where kingdoms are made or lost. I think that the next 2 years is going to be a really interesting moment in time. Like, here in North America, there's, these prevailing headwinds of economic pressure and things like that. And I think that, innovation is critical, right, for companies that want to maintain, their head start and their market presence. And yeah, I think the next 2 years is going to be a really interesting time here.
No, I agree with you. And if you actually take that to mainstream companies, like the CPGs that we were talking about, like the Procter and Gambles and the Coca-Colas and Pepsis of the world, um, I have uh, I have a lot of sympathy for the leadership in these organizations. I think they're just flummoxed by what's happening because the challenge is most of their boards are comprised of white men over the age of 65 who have zero idea about what's happening in the world and
Sure.
honestly couldn't care less. There's so long as their dividends keep coming in on time and everyone's happy, it's to me these companies are really in a frightening position. Imagine 100-year legacy ending because of an inability to innovate. It's frightening.
You're absolutely right. Absolutely right. I mean, and it can happen that quickly, right? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I think we're looking at a 10-year time frame where the world is going to shift. Like there's going to be a seismic shift in the way the world does business. And these companies, unfortunately, with millions of employees around the world, and fixed, rigid models, and SOPs for every damn thing and its mother, they're they're struggling. I mean, I feel for them.
yeah,
It's a one hell of a challenge. But yeah, so corporate, I think let's just leave that for another day because corporate
yeah,
is as you rightly said, it's a completely different kettle of fish.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Love to pick that up sometime.
Yeah, no, I think we're gonna have to have you back for a second edition of this. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a deep dive with OA. Fantastic discussion, Seth. We appreciate you so much for taking out the time and sharing your insights. And we look forward to having you on again soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Omar. I appreciate it.